Hello again, I am Blunty, and that's me spending about an hour with a PlayStation VR prototype a few months back. My full commentary on that experience is in its own video posted at the time, linked down below for your convenience, but long story short, I was actually really impressed by it. Today though, good news everybody! We finally have news on the release date and even more vitally, the price. At the Game Developer Conference in San Francisco right now, Sony took the stage and told us all to expect the PSVR in October, and for a price of 399 American smackaroonies. A little rough maths says that in Aussie dollars that is about 530-ish, and after various taxes and imports and local certifications and all that kind of stuff that adds cost by the time it lands on our fantastically beach-rimmed little island down here, and perhaps a little breathing room for currency fluctuations and stuff, I'd expect it on Aussie shelves somewhere around, I don't know, $579, maybe $599, somewhere in that neighborhood, hopefully. But in either currency, pretty pricey, in fact, kind of the cost of a PlayStation 4 itself, but massively cheaper than either the Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive, of course. And that's even before you take into account the price of a PlayStation 4, should you not own one already, and or a PC powerful enough to run VR for the HTC Vive and Oculus Rift. That, in addition to the fact that it's a console experience, there's no faffing about. It's plug and play, and thus much easier for regular folk to comprehend, set up, and use. And I talked about that whole aspect of the PlayStation VR in my original video if you want to hear more about that, but we also learned some of the vital tech specs today, now nailed down for the retail-ready version. For example, the normal-looking gameplay sent to the TV, as you can see in these shots of me testing out the prototype, is confirmed as a standard feature called the social screen, so others in the room with you can see and possibly even interact with local multiplayer with the person in the goggles and the environment they're experiencing. The field of view is confirmed at 100 degrees, which, while I wasn't told what it was at the time I last tried it, it seems to be in line with what I experienced. Basically, it's wide enough to minimize but not eliminate the feeling of looking through the world through a pair of diving goggles. Basically, it doesn't feel claustrophobic, but you can definitely tell you're looking through goggles. It's now also confirmed to run at 120 Hz, and that is significantly higher than the 90 Hz refresh rate of the Rift and the Vive. And a high refresh rate is essential in reducing the possibility of things like motion sickness. Now, this is the screen refresh rate, not necessarily the frame rate we'll get from any given piece of software. Those are two different things. But I would hope that game developers would aim for 120 frames per second, or at least 60 frames per second, because it's worth noting, if you haven't noticed already, that 120 is nicely and precisely double 60 frames per second, of course. The screen inside the headset is a 5.7-inch OLED screen. It's a 1920 by 1080 panel that is lower than the resolution of the Vive and the Rift, but Sony is also employing a sub-pixel OLED screen that should, and in my experience with the prototype did, virtually eliminate the so-called screen door effect that we saw in the original 720 and 1080p early versions of the Rift. Add this all up with the fact that the PlayStation 4 has sold and continues to sell like proverbial hotcakes, with 36 million of them out there already. The user base for PlayStation VR is likely significantly larger, and given the plug-and-play nature of the console experience, perhaps much more willing to dive into this latest push into VR gaming. Now, in American dollar terms, if you start from scratch, a complete Oculus Rift setup, for example, will cost you a bit north of $1,600 US, perhaps even closer to $2,000, depending on how much extra headroom you want to build that PC with. A PlayStation 4 and the PSVR kit together, if bought individually at least, will be under $800 US, and I suspect that Sony will likely have a package deal of some kind out there that will bring the price down a little bit more even. But even bought separately at $399 a piece, that's still literally half the cost of an Oculus Rift setup from scratch. Now, of course, not everyone is going to start from scratch. This is just one interesting comparative measure. In fact, it's probably safe to admit, of the people willing to give VR a go, more of them probably have PlayStation 4s already than they do gaming PCs with a GTX 970 in it, which is the minimum requirement. In fact, as much as I adore the GTX 970 I used when I built my rig about 7 months ago before I got the 980 Ti Extreme monster from Gigabyte, which has of course since replaced it, it also has to be said the GTX 970 graphics card alone, again the minimum recommended hardware for both Rift and Vive, itself costs almost as much as a PlayStation 4 ready to go, and you still need all the rest of the bits of the PC to go with it. So, while the PSVR is technologically the lesser in several ways to the Vive and the Rift, I'm expecting, even hoping, it will be the key to making VR a practical success in the consumer eye at last. Let me know what you think now that you know the release date, now that you know the price and all the specific details that we kind of needed to know to help make an informed decision. Are you interested in getting one? I certainly am. Like I said, the plug-and-play console experience is going to make things lovely. It's got a nice high refresh rate, good. I've tried on the prototype with the 1080p screen. It doesn't look sort of screen doory and ugly and pixely and stuff like that, like you might worry about with a screen that is comparatively low resolution. The headset fits nice. I don't know how many changes I've made to the retail ready version compared to the version I slapped on my head, but the prototype was already pretty comfortable. But yeah, so far I'm very encouraged and excited and enthusiastic about the PlayStation VR headset. Bring on October. My face is ready for you. Anyway, thanks for watching. I am Blunty, and I will catch you next time.